bred with us and hearing some of their stories. I'm not going to go into a whole life story because that's 44 years of just things that, yeah, you guys will be asleep by then. So I'm just going to try to, get to the meat and potatoes and kind of my moments of surrendering and where I decided to get help. Just to preface and some backstory, my dad was an alcoholic until I was about 10 years old, until I told him that I could no longer see him if he was drinking, and he took that seriously, and he got clean and sober. And he stayed that way for 22 years. He was my best friend. He was that parent that showed up for me always. He showed me unconditional love, and he never judged me. And then there's my mom. She was sober my whole life up until I was about 13 or 14, and then she dove into a very horrible, painful addiction. She's always been hard on me. She's always been very judgmental of me. She was OCD. I could never do anything right. So that, over time, bred insecurities, along with the fact that I had ADD that I didn't know that I had. I couldn't sit still. I couldn't focus. I was loud, and my mom liked to use that against me. She would harp on me constantly for it. So that kind of, the insecurities and then the ADD, that kind of started me feeling like I wasn't like everybody else, and it just started messing with me a little bit. So if I jump to being 15 when I had my first back surgery, I remember the pain meds being there, but they were not a big deal. I literally was, injured, and I just was kind of wanting to get back to school and get back to my friends, right? So I had my back surgery, and I remember putting 2 of the pain pills in my backpack, and then the bottle was gone. That was my mom. My mom took my pills. So, but I remember at school, this was my first time ever experiencing what it felt like to be high. I just was hurting from my first day back to school, and I had taken those 2, and I took them in class. I go into speech and debate, and this is a class that I would never stand up and talk in. I would never participate in. I just kind of sat there getting credit. That's all I wanted to do. Not this day. About 30 minutes later, it kicked in, and the teacher asked for 2 debaters. I stood right up, and I said, I got this shit. Totally not me, right? Everybody was like, who is this, right? I remember feeling like I was focused. I felt this just appropriate enough energy that, I could just function in class. It gave me a feeling of being able to just deal with the day, and I remember liking it, but that was the extent of that. It wouldn't be until I turned 20 that I started to really dive into my pain pill addiction, and that was due to another back surgery that I had. My mom took me to her doctor, of course, who was a rogue doctor. He was now in federal prison, and he was a cash doctor, and they just prescribed a copious amounts of medication, and I was 20 years old, taking things that I should never have been taking. My mom would take hers, she would take mine, and it just started this toxic cycle. She, at this time too, had a pretty unfortunate thing happen to her, and it just shaped who she is today, unfortunately, and that was the end of our relationship. That's kind of like that moment I remember. Her and I are just, I think she blamed me partly, but she's always had resentment towards my dad and I's relationship, and that's something that's always caused issues with us. So this is where, and I say all this to say that over recovery, I've really learned where my weaknesses are, and my mom is one of them. She's also my biggest trigger, and so it helps to speak about it, and it's also a pivotal point in my story. So, and why I was the way I was, along with my ADD. So, I did okay for a couple years. I wasn't using anything. I would go back and forth. I'd have lots and lots of moments of, diving into them again, and then just being clean for a while. And I did all this probably for a good 10 years. I had my daughter. I got pregnant with my daughter, and I stopped everything. It was like the first time it was easy to stop everything, caffeine, sugar, everything. I just wanted to be the best mom I could to her. And I was married to her dad at the time. He chose to go have a family somewhere else, and it was just her and I for most of her life. And so I was a good mom from the beginning of her life, probably for the good. I was a good mom, good hands-on mom, probably for the good first 10 years of her life. But then I pulled the rug out from underneath her because I experienced a bunch of deaths that one year, and I decided that I was going to try something a little bit harder. And just like that first time ever taking those 2 pills, I remembered exactly what that felt like. It was this euphoric feeling. I had no more pain, no physical pain, no emotional pain. I could be functioning, I could focus, I could be totally myself, is what I felt. It became my toxic best friend for several years. It ruined our life. It ruined my daughter's life. And it put me in a tailspin. And I would struggle with that for 5 years. It wouldn't be until I lost absolutely everything before I finally was shaken enough to get small, but I'll get there in a minute. So, struggled with that with heroin for quite a few years. And then after I'd lost my 2 jobs, I lost my car, my daughter didn't want to see me and stuff, I found myself on the streets, and that was a whole new thing for me. I'd never, I was kind of I want to say sheltered. I just didn't know much about the nitty-gritty life, right? So this time. And when I say, I mean, I kind of just dove right in. These were my people. I actually was really disturbed by how comfortable I was out there. More comfortable out there than I was in my own home that I had before. I mean, I just around people that made sense, you know. I rationalized being around them and not being around my family. It was just the street life, and that's what you do, and it's, you know, the agenda that you tell yourself when you're an addict, right? So, I'm trying to say, fast forward to, I'm trying to jump to the spots that matter, but jump forward to when, about 2015, 2016, I didn't have a home, I was on the streets, my daughter barely talked to me. I was in a relationship that was extremely toxic. We both used together. We were very abusive to each other, and he decided that he was going to go and commit robbery in the first degree, got put on Washington's Most Wanted, and we were on the run. And now I was really, really immersed in a life that I had never known before. I mean, you talk about fast life, I was totally on the fast life. We were just totally running from day to day, didn't know who you could trust, people left and right trying to set us up, and he got set up one night, and he got taken. It was a felony stop, and it was probably the most terrifying thing that I've ever been through, aside from being shot at. It was like a felony stop on steroids. I remember all of a sudden, nobody was there, and then they were. It was I could hear the dogs snarling, I could hear the helicopter, and I saw the lasers on the back of our heads, and then the cops yelling, "Don't move or we're going to shoot you." Things got real at that moment, right? And here I am, a mom with my daughter. I hadn't even talked to her in 2 days at this point. She didn't know where I was at. And I'm sitting in this car that's got a laser to my head, being, you know, felony traffic stopped with somebody that committed first degree, you know, armed robbery. So he got taken in, and I was so codependent, I lost my shit. Excuse my language, but I did. I couldn't focus on anything else. I wanted to die because I felt like I didn't have my daughter, I didn't have my family, I had nothing, and now he was gone too. And it broke me. It absolutely broke me, and I spiraled. I was in a tailspin. I went out to my friend's 80 acres in Machias and put a tent up on the back side of his property, and I said, just leave me here. If you don't hear from me for a while, just, doesn't matter, just, you know, just leave me out here. And I had been purposely doing more and more drugs, just trying to take my life. I didn't want to just do it myself. I was just hoping that it would happen on its own, so I just kept doing more and more and more, and by the grace of God, it didn't. But that's what I wanted. I just really didn't care. And I had people telling me, like, aren't you scared to be out there with the bears and the coyotes? And I'm like, I wish it would. I mean, I had a death wish at that point. I wish it would, you know. I didn't want to be in my own skin anymore, and I didn't want to be on this planet anymore. I met, who's my good friend now, he's right here, Ryan. I met him out there as well, and he would spend much of that time with me out there, and I just hated who I was. I didn't even know who I was anymore. I was whiny, I was snotty, I was bratty. I didn't have any wants anymore. I didn't have any dreams anymore. I was just a shell of who I used to be. Like, I had no personality left at all. And if I look back on those pictures, I could see it. My eyes were lifeless. I just didn't even look like myself. I was dying out there, and it would take my best friend's husband coming out there and seeing, because they used to live out there too. It would take him coming out there and seeing that I was out there, and he went back and he told Zoe, which was my best friend, you know, Amanda's out at the property and she's not doing good. She looks like she's gonna die. Like, this is serious. And she came out and got me. And the next day she said, you're coming to my house. She's like, you can't do anything at my house. You're stopping right now. And I said, okay. I mean, I just didn't know what else to do. I was like, okay. I went to their house. I got on Suboxone and I started working. She got me a job. And I was doing okay. I was doing all right. And I thought that would be the end of my story, right? No, I still didn't have enough lessons learned, and I needed to go learn more, apparently. I left their house, and Ryan and I proceeded to go live in the back of his truck at his best friend's house. And it just kind of spiraled. It was a spiral. He was spiraling in his addiction, and I was spiraling in my addiction. Things were just getting so much worse. I didn't think it could, but it did. I never thought it could get as bad as it did. You know what I mean? I thought I'd hit rock bottom so many times, and it just kept getting lower and lower and lower. And to the point where we were out on this property at Granite Falls with absolutely nothing. We were in a rundown RV, holes in the ceiling, snow coming in. It was freezing cold. I had just spent another holiday season without my family, without my daughter. And I think Ryan was gone seeing his son one night, and I just was like, what am I doing? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to put my family through this anymore. I don't want to put my daughter through this anymore. I didn't know that there was anything left, any other choices to be made other than to just take my own life. And that's what I was going to do. And I wrote my goodbye letters to my daughter. I wrote my goodbye letters to my family, my dad, and I was ready to take my life that night. By the grace of God again, I fell asleep. And I woke up the next day, or I prayed, I dropped to my knees and I prayed and I asked God, please, if this isn't what you want for my life, please, you got to speak to me now, because I can't hear you now, and I need to hear you because I'm ending it. And he made me fall asleep for that night, and I didn't wake up until there was a knock on the RV door, and it was somebody saying that there was the sheriff's program at the gate. They were there to offer us help, that the property we were on sold at auction. They wanted to offer help to all of us, and so we met our social workers, Como 4 News, and a couple sheriffs there, and that's what started my thinking into recovery. That's when I finally was like, okay, I prayed and he answered, and I need to not look back at this point. I just need to see it through. So my social worker Amy, she was amazing. Our social worker Amy, she was a few days. She's just been like an angel in our life. We still to this day. I mean, 6 years later, she's still a friend of mine, kind of a colleague. I get to call her and refer people to her all the time for my work. But I went from the trap house to the diversion center. Stayed there for 7 days. From the diversion center to treatment, which I was there for 28 days, and then I went into clean and sober living. Out of the 12 people that stayed on the property, Ryan and I were the only ones that accepted the help. And we're the only ones still to this day that are clean out of those people. Some of them are no longer with us, and some of them are still out there in active addiction. But at the clean and sober house, I was able to get a job, do IOP, get my relationship back with my daughter. My dad's health took a turn for its worse, but I was finally able to show up for my family because I was able to work so hard that I got us an apartment. I moved my dad and my stepmom in with us. I was able to take care of him for the last 6 months of his life. I was able to be there with him when he took his last breath. And I was able to show up for him in a way that I had not showed up for him in years. And kind of give back to my dad the way he had done for me. I could look at it as if, all this time I missed with my dad, I can't do that. I have to look at the time I had with him and that I was able to be there for him during that time that he needed me the most, My daughter and I have worked on our relationship tremendously. We've got a great relationship, and today my recovery looks a little bit like this. It's not perfect. My life is kind of a shit show all the time. That's the real truth. I didn't have a pink cloud when I got clean. I didn't like recovery at first. The first year of my recovery, I hated it. It was hard. My life is hard and it's messy, and sometimes it's a struggle. But I have my daughter back. I have my family, the chosen family around me, my tribe that I've chosen as my support system. I have a great job. And I have 5R, and that's, to me, so much more worth than going back out there and doing it all over again. I don't want to ever give up what I have, so it can be a shit show all at once. I don't want to throw it away. So today with 5R, I get to be on the leadership. I get to be a part of the outreach team, do events like this. I get to go in and talk to other people and give them a little bit of hope. Like I got that one day that they gave me the hope. And I get to be so much more to my community than what I was before. I took from the community for so long, and now I'm able to give back to that community in a positive way, make my daughter proud, and be a woman that I can stand up here today and look at all of you and say, I'm not afraid to be vulnerable in front of you and tell you my story, And I'm just living in God's will for me. So I appreciate you guys letting us come out here today to talk and being here and hear our stories and all the support that you've given us.